And hello, everyone, and thank you for dialing in today. So, this is the next topic in the series, and it's thriving through change. Um, and I'll start the presentation with a quote from Barbara Sher saying, "Change is not only likely, it's inevitable." I mean, change happens all the time in everything we do, in terms of our experiences, our work, in families, in our day to day, going about, even just traffic. So, the learning outcomes for today is we'll be looking at the types of change and describe them. I'll be explaining the psychology of change, and also the strengths and challenges during change, related to our color energies. I won't go through too much about the applying the tools and the rest because that will be in the last of the topics I'll be talking about next month. So the change landscape. Um, what types of change are affecting organizations today? So can you just drop into the chat where you have experienced change or any any changes that you've experienced in the past or going through now. um yeah, just to share the types of change you have, and it could be in the workplace or it could be outside the workplace that affects you or affects other people. It doesn't, you don't have to share too much, but just give us what you have come across or experienced in change.
Okay, we've got a few coming through. So Joe has mentioned staffing levels due to financial restraints.
Yeah,
Karen, amount of people in one area.
yeah.
And just waiting on a couple of other people I can see are typing. Thank you, everyone who's adding to the chat. Always good.
Excellent.
Illness, so people being unwell or you being
Yes,
ill
yes,
yourself.
yes.
Government reform and how to prepare for that. That
Oh
seems
yes.
like the main ones. No one, I can't see any little dots for anyone else continuing. So those are the main ones flagged up in the chat.
Great. So, and I think they'll match some of the ones that are on my slide. So, somebody talked about staffing levels due to reduced budget. So, we've got there new leadership. Some, that's a thing that impacts people in organizations when managers leave or there's a new direction, new business strategy, new expectations about how work gets done and what you're measured on. Colleagues leaving, new team member added, new processes. So, and with the new technology that's coming in, and um, lots of talk about AI and what that means, that's, a transition that is very big for people. Team reorganization, and there's loads, we could just go on and on and on. So change affects us in many ways, and we can feel it's personal to us. And sometimes for people, it's a sense of loss of control. And, people go into a process where, there's some resistance to change, especially like if new technologies being introduced, it's like, oh, I've always found the old way easier than this way. And you get that sometimes because we always like the familiar, we're comfortable, and change can be uncomfortable. Um, some people have mentioned loss of support, sense of loss, uh, as in something's been taken away from us. So it could be, especially when as Emma mentioned, somebody mentioned staffing levels. If you have a team and all of a sudden you're told that, okay, we don't have enough budget, so you're going to do the same work, but less less staff. That can be a big impact. Perceived lack of choice, and again, adapting to change takes more time for some people compared to others. So we're going to be talking about types of change and transition. Are the slides changing, Emma?
Yes, they are.
Hello?
Everything is
Oh,
good. Yes. Sorry,
oh,
I started chatting
great.
away and I was on mute, which is the classic. Um, no, all changing, all looking good.
Excellent. Right. So change comes in many forms, and we can categorize them into three main types. So you've got the shock, evolutionary, and strategic. And I'm going to go through each one of them. So, shock. So, it's a type of change that's sudden and often unexpected, where there's little time to plan. Um, and it could be, a change in a system where it becomes clear that the old way of doing things is not, it's no longer relevant. So, and a new way's the only option. So, we can always go back to COVID. So that was a bit of a shock because uh, when we were asked to all stay in, people still needed to run their businesses, and it was done really quickly, and there was hardly any time to plan. But the way a lot of businesses had to communicate with their clients was in a different way, and which we're using and embracing a lot now is everybody was going on to virtual platforms. So it was a big change. It was a big shock. It was very sudden. But we, all of us, those who were in companies, uh, those in families, individuals, organizations, we had to change. We had to adapt to a new way of living, a new way of working, a new way of operating and interacting with people. So that's the shock. Then we have evolutionary. So that kind of change is incremental and takes place, gradually over time. So it's used in when you have to change processes, making advancements. So, for instance, I'll use our telephones and laptops and iPads, that sort of thing. There's updates that come from time to time, and that's we just download certain updates to keep up with any kind of changes that our laptops or phones need to adapt to, or new technology that's coming.
Toyin, and just to
So
let you
those,
know, sorry,
oh,
Toyin, to interrupt, your incremental slide isn't up yet.
I haven't gone there.
Apologies.
I'm talking about evolutionary.
Oh gosh, oh, your evolutionary slide isn't up. Sorry, it's still on
Oh,
shock.
is it up now?
We are still on shock on my screen. We're on three types of change. Oh, it's back to three types. Now shock. And it hasn't moved on from shock. There we go, evolutionary. Apologies for saying the wrong one, but there we are. We're on the evolutionary screen now. Thank you, sorry.
Sorry, guys. Right. So I was talking about evolutionary being not really noticed. Um, so you don't always notice the change immediately. And like I was saying about certain updates that we have on our laptops and whatever, we just download things, or on our phones and iPads, we download things, but we might not notice any changes until later on. when something new just pops up. Can you see the strategic slide?
Yes, that is now up. I can see the strategic side.
Thank you. So organizations plan and implement strategic change, and that's just to boost their competitive edge with, other companies or the market that they're in. Yeah, so you just want to gain more advantage, and so that kind of change as well is all about, achieving the business goals, and it could be due to changes of business policy. There might be a structure or a process. For instance, a lot of businesses are now automating, um, and that's so as to free up time. So certain processes are automated because there's a lot of duplication happening within the system, or it could free up time for somebody to do something else. So it's usually initiated by the leadership and then rolled out to the rest of the organization. So I'm going to talk about change and transition. Is the definition page up,
Yes, it's
Emma?
up. I'll let you. I'll drop in if anything else happens in terms of changing pages. I'll give you a shout. But if you don't hear
Thank you.
anything from me, assume all is fine.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So defining change and transition. So on here I've got, it isn't the changes you that do you in, it's the transitions. Because change is not the same as a transition. And as you can see, change is situational. So things like a new site, a new boss, new roles, you know, when you have a new leader or you're going to a new place, as in, I remember when I worked in a previous job and they changed our site all the way from Uxbridge to Windsor. And that was a big challenge for certain people who had chosen the site in Uxbridge because it was closer to home. So then transition, that's the psychological process people have to go through to come to terms with a new situation brought on by change. So if you're looking at the differences between change and transition, change is external, transition is internal, because that's happening with you and how you manage that within yourself. So that transition, that psychological process people go through is not always the same. People don't approach it the same way, or it doesn't affect everybody the same way, even though they're in the same situation. So the change or situational bit is fact. So the fact is there's going to be a new site, there's going to be a new boss, there's going to be new roles. Those are the facts. But the transition is going to be different for everyone for those things. Right, so we're looking at the change curve here. And so this was a change curve which was superimposed over the grief, the processes of grief that was done by, I've forgotten her first name, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So this is done by William Bridges. So if you have a look, you have the shock and denial bit, which is the endings, that falls into the ending zone. And then you have the resistance and the detachment. So people go through this, everybody will go through this curve, their own pace. So everybody has their own pace in going through this, and you'll see in terms of grief, because it's almost like uh, going through a grieving, because there's that sense of loss, especially if you've had to change a role which you weren't expecting, for instance. Then you go through that process. And of course, if there's a change of how processes um, are going to be now done, um, especially using certain digital platforms, there will be some kind of resistance to that, because some people still say, look, I'm, I always work really well with paper. I'm not good with computers. I like writing everything down. So some people can, and that's just an example. Some people can be kind of resistance to embracing even new technology. There's a there's that detachment, and William Bridges describes the neutral zone where, and this is the time when either you go backwards if you're pushed too, if somebody's pushed too hard, or you go forwards, meaning, okay, maybe I could look at this as an opportunity. And so that's when that exploration happens. And with exploration comes acceptance. And then we get into the new beginnings zone, where we have more commitment to the change and we're going to embrace it. So this is a quote from Susan Bridges. The essence of life takes place in the neutral zone, phase of transition. It is in that interim spaciousness that all possibilities, creativity, and innovative ideas can come to life and flourish. So if I go back to that slide here, you'll see the neutral zone. And this is where change happens in terms of embracing the new beginnings and seeing the opportunities that might be there for us. Oops, we're not going to do that. So I mentioned that people all have their own pace of navigating through change. So here's sort of an S curve. They're called S curves in terms of how we navigate through transitions. So you've got your leaders, your managers, and individual contributors. So, and then you've got your time, you've got your buy into the new reality, and the time, as you can see on the different axes. Yeah. And this is the process that happens when, okay, for instance, there's going to be a restructure in a company. I'm using that as an example. So the leaders will get together and they would have discuss why they need a restructure, what that's going to look like, and at the end, what they're trying to achieve. So they would have gone from that bottom of the S curve to the top of, yeah, this is a good idea, restructure is going to happen. So now they give that information, as you can see, that kind of circular line is touching the bottom of the second S curve, the curve of the managers. So the leaders have already gone through their own change and have embraced the idea of the new beginnings. But now when they're feeding this to their managers, now the managers have to now go through that change of the shock, and the denial and all of that. And they have to go through their own S curve. And then when they get to the top of their S curve, they get and get the buy-in, they have to now give that to the rest of the team and tell the rest of the team. and the rest of the team have to go through that change as well. So the same S curve. So it takes time for people to embrace things. And sometimes, and even if we take it out of the workplace, there's sometimes we make a decision and we're thinking it's a really good one. And we tell somebody else and that this is what you've decided to do. And you sometimes we can get impatient because they haven't taken it on board as quickly as we have, without us realizing that we've already gone through that change and we've already embraced whatever decision we're making. They still have to work through that S curve and come to the same conclusion when they're ready. So that can take time. And sometimes some of us are patient enough to wait for that person to do that, whereas other people can be a bit more impatient. It's like when we're giving out a piece of work to somebody and we get it. And we're like, this is a process, it's not rocket science, do this. Whereas the other person might need more information, um, be shown a bit more support because they don't get it as quickly as you do. We all have our S curves. And then there's reacting versus responding. So this is about awareness. So when you react, it's instinctive and there's no choice. And when you're responding, you're making a proactive choice. So if you're being thoughtful, if you're coming from a place of thinking it through, then you are making a proactive choice. When you act on instinct, you're just reacting. So can anybody give me examples where change has happened and maybe you've been in a team or in whatever situation with other people where some people have taken it on board while others have really struggled with it, but eventually have come through? If you put that in the chat. Emma, are you still there?
I am there. I was just waiting for the chat. And some people, I can see the little bubbles. They are going. Some people are typing. So one example is implementing a new computer system
Yeah, yeah,
and react versus responding to that.
yeah.
And someone else is still, oh, some more people are typing. Oh. Introducing new sort of management type roles like a new deputy or a team leader.
Yeah,
Sort of older staff members not adapting or finding it harder to adapt. So there's that sort of that older staff member struggling to
yeah,
adapt. And actually, I was kind of thinking on my own as well, and thinking about the strategic change and
yes.
how at management level it can seem like strategic change. But I've worked for organisations, not this one, um, where even though it's been strategic from a management perspective to people
Mm,
lower down, it's felt like a shock. And I've
yes,
seen people never get past the react phase.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting one. And then I'll let you, I'm going to mute myself.
And oh, thank you very much, guys, for that information that you've put in there and what Emma has relayed to me. And it's true. some people really find it difficult with change. It's very hard to move out of your comfort zone for some people. And that's all to do with, um, as I spoke to you guys last month in the past, in terms of our personality types, our preferences, we all deal with change differently. And again, it's mentioned that the older people who might not respond to change as well, especially when it comes to technology. And I've heard this several times, um, that, yeah, it's difficult, but it's also about the level of support that we give each other as well, and getting people to move on, because sometimes if people are pushed too hard, then they go backwards and then they never embrace that change. Whereas those who get the support and they're given the why and they're shown the opportunities that it opens them up to, then they're more willing to respond to that change in a favorable manner. So going on to our preferences, and uh, just a reminder for those who haven't been on here in terms of color energies and preferences. So uh, those who have a preference for lots of information, we're calling them the cool blue. So I'm going to start with cool blue. They like facts. Um, They like figures, they're very analytical, and they like to know the reason why they're doing something. Yeah. So those people who have a preference, a leading preference for that, the way they attend to the management of the change process, they focus on the how and the what. And when it comes to their strengths, because they like a lot of information and they're quite questioning. So somebody who leads with the blue energy, they're very good at the management process of change. They have an attention to detail, so they look at, the complications that might be proposed there, and they're very good at developing contingencies and methodologies for implementing. So they have a process. They're really process driven. Now, again, a reminder for fiery red, they're very top line. Um, they don't like waffle, and they're very direct. So when a dreadful somebody who leads with fiery red, and if there's a change happening within a team or an organization, they make quick decisions. So they display decisiveness in the determining the direction of change. They're good at decision making. They're resolute in a commitment towards the new direction, and they see it as a challenge. So they engage and relish the challenge that the change presents. And they're usually the initiators of change as well. So they can make it happen. So they're the driving aspect. So you might have people who have a leaning towards that in the team. So that's one of their strengths, especially when you're thinking about introducing change to an organization or a team. It's great to get them on board because they will make it happen. They're into that process. So the people with the blue energy, they're more, um, what's the process going to look like? How do we, what needs to happen? What's the background? What are you looking to achieve? And how do we implement it? And if it doesn't go the way we're thinking, what's the backup plan? While these guys were like, look, let's make it happen. That's the fiery red. Let's make it happen. And let's keep us focused to make sure it happens. So, and then we've got the sunshine yellow. Those with the sunshine yellow energy are very social. They like to take people along the journey, and um, they're the ideas people. So the strengths of those people who lead with that color within a team, especially, they seek and enjoy the stimulation of change. And so you will have people when there's lots of change in the company, because if there's lots of change, then it's not boring because they get bored easily. So they also seek others' creative input in designing the change because they like to be brought along on that journey, and they encourage participation and involvement of all those affected by the change process. So they see it as, an opportunity. So they're optimistic and positive, especially even when some people might be resistance. They'll always see, they always have that blue sky thinking that this could be great, this could be a great opportunity. And then you've got those who lead with earth green energy. And just as a reminder again, earth green energy, they always look for harmony, always looking for harmony within a team process, making sure that everybody um, has their say, feels comfortable. That's how they make decisions. They want to make sure there's a good consensus. So again, seeking that consensus and finding a mutually beneficial way forward. And they will consider the impact on others, encourage cooperation and collaboration during that change. So they're really supportive, considers the consequences and implications, and ensures that all are brought along in the process. So those people who lead with that color energy are very supportive. So where we had the example of maybe the older people who might not embrace change, and there's some older people who love change, um, it's getting that, if we draw on our green energy, it's about using that to support those who might not be as far along that change curve as you are. But also with these people with color energies and how we are and human beings, we have our challenges as well. So for those who lead with a lot of cool blue energy, they can be overly cautious and somewhat pessimistic, because they're very questioning, and it's always what if, what if, what if. Um, they can be critical, and see problems rather than solutions. And if a method is well established, then you're going to have to be very clear and give as much information, factual information, and the data behind it in why the new change is better than what is working right now. And they may be attached to true and tried and true approaches. So if, like I said before, if it's working, they need a really good reason as to why you want to change, because look, this works. So, I don't understand why you want to move on to something else. And then those with fiery red energy, they can be impatient. So remember when I mentioned earlier that, especially when you're along the S curve and you're introducing change to somebody else, and you're thinking, well, like a piece of work or whatever, and you're saying, look, do this, because we need this by this time, but that person might not be as fast at it as somebody who's got that fiery red energy, so they become impatient. Like, look, I think it's clear, it's not rocket science, come on, you know. So they can be overly directive, have a tendency to overmanage, may not consider other people's feelings or the personal impact of change on others, and may have unrealistic expectations on timelines and deliverables. Yeah, so it's just being mindful if um, There are people with who lead with a lot of red energy. Just be mindful that, yeah, not everybody works at the same pace. Then we've got those who lead with sunshine yellow. And again, the challenges there may create more ideas and options for moving forward than is possible to consider. Remember, I said one of the preferences for sunshine yellow is that they're ideas people. Everything's great, you know. Uh, can create confusion through underdeveloped or vague ideas. Yeah. And that's because, again, natural leaning for somebody who produces a lot of, who leans towards a lot of yellow energy. Again, one of the characteristics is they have a lot of ideas, but not really any steps or processes of how to get there. Tends to be disorganized, leading to a lack of follow through and completion. Can be very overly optimistic and may commit to taking on more than they can deliver because, yeah, it's a great opportunity. They like different things happening. Um, they love change, you know, it keeps them interested. But again, for somebody who pushes a lot of yellow energy, yeah, those are the things to look out for. Not everybody, you know, with self-awareness, people do recognize that and they can temper that. Again, um, those who have a lot of earth green energy may prefer to keep things as they are. They like to keep the pace of change slower to maintain harmony. Um, can be risk averse, basically, you know. That let's just keep it the way it is. It's working well. And maybe uncomfortable with uncertainty and you know that change creates. So for them and for others as well, what's this process going to be like? What's, you know, we don't know too much about it. We don't have enough information. So that can make them uncomfortable as well. So in the matter of time, I'm going to leave it at this because we've got the second part coming up next month. But it's all about recognizing that change happens all the time. The thing that's important is how do we respond to it and how we manage it and how we manage others around us as well to embrace that change. And how do we support each other to move forward?